Sao Paulo is quite an amazing city. It's huge. It's got around about 18 million people in it. It's the fourth biggest city in the world. It has the longest traffic jam in the world every day, 150 miles of traffic jam every rush hour, and that is just something to be seen. You've got roads there like their equivalent of the North Circular is 10 lanes in each direction. Funnily enough, it's actually on the banks of the river that runs through the centre of Sao Paulo, which you'd imagine if it was in London would be prime real estate, but of course there it's not. It's really pretty much like an open sewer, which I guess is how things were heading over here about 150 years ago, so we can't say too much about that. How can you actually invest in Brazil? Well, there are a number of ways. It's pretty hard to do it direct, obviously, but there are other ways to get involved. There are generally spread bets on ETFs. You can go direct into ETFs, which is great because you can put them in your ISA, which means they're tax-free, so that's a winner. The currency, well, short of actually going and buying some, I'm not quite so sure that's a really brilliant idea. I mean, if you do go there, I do, obviously, and I'm quite happy to buy currency because I know I'm going to spend it. But if you're not, then that's probably not such a hot idea, really. Get involved in the stock market. You can also buy Brazilian stock. A lot of Brazilian stocks are listed on the US exchange, on the New York Stock Exchange. So, of course, if you do trade the US directly, you can buy them there. I wouldn't really think too much in terms of doing spread bets and buying US stocks from here in the UK. Although there's no stamp duty on buying the stocks themselves, there are problems with exchange differences and so forth. If you're investing in US stocks, the best thing to do is to have dollars in the US to invest in them, in my view. Of course, you should probably take advice on that. Brazil's a kind of a strange mixture of old and new because you've got, well, I suppose London is as well if you think about it, but there's very much this kind of new tower block mentality coming on. Everyone's got cars. I mean, you've never seen so many cars in your life as they have over there. And unlike in London where we sort of try and pretend it's not happening and ban cars from places, they just go with the flow. You can drive up to a really hot club in the middle of Sao Paulo on a Saturday night and you just give your keys to somebody and they go off and park it and charge you next to nothing. For all I know, they go mini cab with the damn thing for a few hours, but you don't care because you don't have to park it and you don't have to worry about it. I know people usually even leave valuables in the boot and nothing ever happens to them. So not quite the violent place that you might have imagined. I've been in Sao Paulo a lot. I was living there and I was living in Salvador as well, and I wasn't murdered even once. So there we are, case in point. You've got the same sort of thing that I guess we had here and in the States, maybe sort of before the war, where you've got lots of people. If you look at a petrol station, you've got loads of people working there. They do ridiculous things that we would never dream of doing. Like they sweep up puddles and get rid of them off the forecourt. Huge amount of manpower over there. Unfortunately, the education system isn't all it could be, and they will have to spend decades actually investing in that before they don't need to import foreign labour and foreign expertise. But nonetheless, they do have a massive sort of capital, if you like, in terms of people themselves. All that will change, obviously, as time goes by. They become more prosperous after the very first recession in Brazil, after economic growth. Of course, all those jobs like the guy in the lift who presses the buttons for you, they'll all go, won't they? I think personally it's a great place to think about investing. There's only one way really to know how a place is doing, and that's to get in there on the ground. And I remember going to New York in April and being very consciously aware that they were living in complete denial that there was an economic debacle around the corner. That said, it was still clear to me that there was one. And going to Brazil and the Czech Republic and places like that, you can really get the feeling that these are growth areas. These are not places that are in the same sort of step as we are. They're not in sync with us, and they will be doing well. I suppose one thing that's worrying if you're from the first world like we all are, is that can our lifestyles be maintained? And well, to be honest, no, I don't think they can. I think we're all in for a pretty rough ride over time, and things like what happened in Argentina a few years ago is probably going to happen to a first world country in the next 50 years, if not more than one. And there'll be no money. The banks will close, and they'll be sort of foreclosed on by the International Monetary Fund or whoever happens to be in charge at that time. which is largely because the only reason we've had the lifestyle we've had is because we've in effect had an empire. Well, we had one and now the Americans have got one, but de facto we get more than our fair share of everything. And I think you have to be looking ahead, thinking that if you don't invest outside of Europe, and I think this is a key thing, if you're not investing outside of Europe, you're really linked in to something which is not going to perform as well as other areas in the world over time. And that means that if you're, say, 25 now, by the time you retire, people in South America are going to be richer than you. They're going to have bigger pensions, and you won't be keeping pace. And with people living longer and longer, I think it's a very real thing. Even if you're sort of 40 or 50, you need to be thinking about this. To keep your money in the first world entirely may not be such a great idea. Quite what you do with it is another matter, but right now everyone's always talking about what's the next big thing. When are the markets going to bounce back? Hey, they're not going to bounce back. All right, it's recession's not over yet, the bear market's not over yet. Forget about the UK and the US markets and Europe and so forth. There are one or two areas that you might want to get involved in there, but by and large, with the exception of a few sort of fake rallies as we prepare to go further down in those markets, there is no real opportunity there. You're best off keeping your money in cash, quite honestly. That said, if you do want to get involved in investing in things, then look to places that are growing, like Eastern Europe and Brazil, that are likely to be unaffected by other factors and that are out of step, out of sync with what's happening to us. Basically, Brazil is a place that's managed to fly under the radar. You don't hear too much about it. You generally hear about China, Russia, and India. For my money, Brazil is the jewel in the crown. It's the one that's actually likely to produce steady gains and be less volatile than the other markets that you can possibly get involved in at this stage. For those that are interested, yes, I do speak Portuguese.